Imagine this. Someone wrongs you. They betray you, lie to your face, maybe even try to humiliate you in front of others. Your natural instinct? You want to fight back. You want to show them they messed with the wrong person. But here's the truth. The second you react, you give them exactly what they wanted. Your energy, your focus, your time. And that's how they win. What if I told you there's a way to destroy every single one of your enemies without ever lifting a finger, without ever raising your voice, without ever throwing a punch? Because real power, lasting, undeniable power is not found in fists or in fights. It's found in silence. It's found in control. It's found in your ability to rise so high above someone that they can't even reach you. Think about it. The strongest people in this world are never the loudest in the room. They're the ones everyone watches, but no one can touch. They don't fight battles with words. They don't fight battles with fists. They win wars without ever stepping onto the battlefield. And that's what we're gonna talk about today. Not revenge, not retaliation, but 10 ways you can destroy your enemies without ever fighting them. 10 ways to disarm them so completely that they end up defeated by their own frustration while you walk away untouchable. Because the truth is this, your enemy's biggest weapon is your reaction. Take that away and you've already won. When we talk about enemies, most people picture a face. They imagine a rival, a toxic coworker, someone who betrayed them, maybe even a person who made their life difficult for years. But the truth is, the enemy isn't always outside of you. Sometimes it's within. It can take the shape of doubt, fear, anger, jealousy, laziness, insecurity, or even the past you keep holding on to. And until you learn to redefine what an enemy truly is, you will keep fighting the wrong battles, exhausting yourself over people and situations that don't even deserve your energy. An enemy, in its purest form, is anything that tries to stop you from becoming who you are meant to be. It could be a toxic person who constantly underestimates you, or it could be the voice in your own head telling you that you're not enough. It could be a competitor at work trying to undermine your efforts, or it could be procrastination that robs you of your potential every single day. The biggest mistake people make is thinking enemies are only flesh and blood. But life's toughest battles are rarely fought with people. They are fought with habits, with mindsets, and with weaknesses that keep you from living at your highest level. Now, here's the key. If you define your enemy as only a person, you limit yourself. You'll spend your life chasing shadows, trying to outmatch others, proving them wrong, and exhausting yourself in fights that bring you no real growth. But if you learn to see the bigger picture, if you learn that your true enemy is anything that distracts, diminishes, or derails your progress, you suddenly gain clarity. You realize not every battle is worth fighting. Not every insult deserves an answer. Not every challenge comes from outside of you. Some of the deadliest enemies are invisible. Self-sabotage, doubt, impatience, envy, resentment. These destroy more lives than any human rival ever could. Redefining the enemy means stepping into a new mindset where you no longer waste energy on what doesn't matter. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone is constantly trying to provoke you. They insult you, spread rumors, or try to pull you into a confrontation. If you define your enemy as just that person, you'll get trapped in a cycle of reaction, arguing, defending yourself, trying to prove them wrong. But if you redefine your enemy as loss of control, then suddenly the battle changes. You're no longer fighting them, you're fighting your own tendency to lose composure. And the moment you win that battle, they're powerless. They no longer control your mood, your reputation, or your peace of mind. That is how you redefine what an enemy is, and that is how you win, without even stepping into the ring. Think about history's greatest leaders, thinkers, and warriors. Their enemies weren't just nations or individuals. Their greatest struggles were internal, mastering fear, controlling anger, rising above doubt. They knew that if they didn't conquer themselves, any external victory would be meaningless. That's why the wisest people in the world always say, the first battle is within. If you master that, the rest takes care of itself. So ask yourself, what is your real enemy? Is it the person who criticizes you online? Or is it your own insecurity that makes their words cut so deep? Is it your coworker who seems to always get ahead of you? Or is it your own habit of comparing yourself instead of focusing on your path? Is it your ex who betrayed you? Or is it the fact that you still give them space in your head and let them poison your future with their memory? Once you answer these questions honestly, you'll realize most of your so-called enemies have no real power. The only power they ever had was the permission you gave them. Redefining the enemy also means raising your perspective. Think about a lion. Do you think a lion wastes its time chasing after every fly that buzzes around its head? No. The lion is focused on bigger prey, on things that actually sustain its survival. Yet, so many people spend their lives swatting at flies, every insult, every petty rivalry, every opinion thrown at them. They let tiny distractions steal massive amounts of energy, and then they wonder why they feel drained, why they're not moving forward, why life feels heavier than it should. The truth is, they've been fighting the wrong enemies all along. When you begin to shift your focus, everything changes. The colleague who tries to sabotage you stops being your enemy. Instead, your enemy becomes complacency, the temptation to stop improving and sink to their level. The friend who gossips about you isn't your real enemy. Your true enemy is resentment, the poison that would make you bitter if you hold on to it. The person who underestimates you isn't your enemy. Your enemy is doubt, the inner voice whispering that maybe they're right. And when you identify that, you can finally do something about it. You can take back your power, not by fighting people, but by elevating yourself above them. The beauty of this shift is that it gives you control. You can't control what people do to you. You can't control whether someone lies, cheats, betrays, or undermines you. But you can control your response. You can control whether you let their actions steal your focus. And when you redefine the enemy, you realize the fight is never with them. It's always with yourself. It's always about protecting your peace, your growth, your focus, your mission. That's what makes you untouchable. At the end of the day, your greatest victory will not come from defeating another person. It will come from defeating the version of yourself that is easily distracted, easily offended, easily pulled into unnecessary battles. It will come from becoming so strong mentally, emotionally, and spiritually that no one outside of you has the power to shake you. That's when you know you've truly destroyed your enemies, because they no longer exist. They can scream, they can provoke, they can gossip, but none of it touches you. You've redefined the battlefield, and in that new battlefield, the only opponent is yourself. And once you master that, you've already won.
Power has always fascinated humanity.
When most people hear the word, they imagine force, authority, or domination. They think of battles, arguments, loud voices, and heavy hands. They think of someone imposing their will on others through fear or aggression. But that is a shallow definition. True power has nothing to do with fighting. It has nothing to do with how hard you can hit or how loud you can shout. True power is the quiet ability to influence, to control yourself, and to move forward without ever needing to raise your voice or your fist. It's a strength that does not need to announce itself, because its presence alone is undeniable. Violence is easy. Anyone can lash out when they feel provoked. Anyone can scream, curse, or throw a punch. That takes no discipline, no mastery, no higher thinking. It's primitive, reactive, and predictable. But power without violence, that's rare. That's where greatness lives. Because when you choose not to react in anger, when you choose to stay calm in chaos, you hold an advantage that no enemy can take from you. You become untouchable because nothing rattles you and nothing pulls you out of your center. Think about it this way. When someone tries to provoke you, their goal is not always to win. Sometimes their goal is just to make you lose, to see you lose your composure, to watch you spiral into anger, to make you react. The moment you take the bait, they have control. They know which buttons to press. But if you refuse to respond, if you stay calm, if you act like their words or actions don't even scratch your surface, you rob them of power instantly. That is what makes power without violence so effective. It takes their weapon and renders it useless. Power without violence begins with understanding the difference between reaction and response. Reaction is instant, emotional, thoughtless. It feels good in the moment, but costs you in the long run. Response is measured, strategic, deliberate. It requires patience, intelligence, and perspective. When someone insults you, Your reaction might be to insult them back. Your response, however, might be silence, a smile, or simply walking away. One shows weakness, the other shows control. And here's the paradox: when you don't fight, you win. Because now the other person is left fighting themselves, battling their own frustration when they realize they cannot break you. This doesn't mean weakness. Too often people mistake silence for surrender or calmness for passivity. But let me be clear, choosing not to fight doesn't mean you can't. It doesn't mean you're incapable. It means you are powerful enough not to need it. A lion does not roar at every sound in the jungle. A king does not argue with his subjects. A warrior doesn't waste arrows on targets that don't matter. That's the essence of true power. Knowing you could fight, but choosing not to, because the fight isn't worth your time. The philosophy of power without violence also means valuing strategy over impulse. Ask yourself, what do you gain from reacting? Most of the time, nothing. Maybe temporary satisfaction, maybe the illusion of victory, but in the bigger picture, you've given away your control. On the other hand, by holding your composure, you gain everything: clarity, respect, the ability to think ahead, and the priceless gift of not being ruled by someone else's actions. That's real strength. That's real dominance. The most powerful people in the world are not the ones who bark the loudest or strike the hardest. They're the ones who cannot be moved. The ones who stand firm when storms rage around them, the ones whose silence is more intimidating than another person's scream. Because silence makes people wonder. Silence forces them to confront their own insecurity. Silence keeps you in control. While they spiral out of it, that is how you win, without violence. You let them destroy themselves while you remain untouched. Every time you choose not to fight, you're not avoiding conflict. You're asserting dominance. You're saying, this is not worth me. I am bigger than this. And people feel that. They sense it in the way you carry yourself, in your refusal to be pulled into petty games. Over time, even your enemies realize they cannot get to you. And when they can't get to you, they can't control you. At its core, power without violence is about self-mastery. You cannot command respect from others until you first command yourself. You cannot expect loyalty, trust, or influence if you crumble at every insult or provocation. Discipline, restraint, and composure are not just personal virtues. They are weapons. They are shields. They are proof that you operate on a level others cannot touch. In life, you will always encounter people who test you, people who poke, prod, and push just to see if you'll break. Your job is not to fight them. It's to show them that you cannot be broken. Because when you remain unshaken, you do more than just win the moment. You build a reputation. People will come to know you as someone who doesn't bend, doesn't lose control, doesn't waste time on petty battles. And that reputation becomes your shield. Enemies will think twice before trying to provoke you because they'll realize it's pointless. The philosophy of power without violence is the philosophy of kings, of warriors, of people who understand that life is too short to be wasted in meaningless fights. The greatest victory you will ever achieve is not knocking someone else down. It's standing so tall that no one can pull you down. When you realize that, you'll never again feel the need to fight because you'll already know you've won. When people think about destroying an enemy, they often imagine confrontation, loud arguments, clever comebacks, or even physical fights. But the truth is, the most effective way to defeat an enemy isn't to step into their arena, it's to make them powerless without ever engaging. You don't destroy an enemy by fighting them. You destroy them by living in such a way that they cannot touch you, by using strategies that disarm their influence without wasting your energy. There are 10 ways to do this, and each of them builds on the idea that real strength is quiet, strategic, and rooted in self-control. The first way is silence. Silence uncensored people more than words ever can. When someone insults you, mocks you, or tries to provoke you, the reaction they want is for you to lash out. They want to see you lose control because that validates their effort. But when you respond with silence, when you give them nothing to feed on, they are left battling themselves. They wonder if they even matter to you, if their words had any impact at all, and that frustration eats them alive. Silence is not weakness, It is the ultimate declaration of power because it shows that you don't need to fight to prove you've won. The second way is success. Nothing destroys an enemy more than watching you achieve everything they said you couldn't. When someone underestimates you, they hope to see you fail. They want to see you struggle so they can feel superior. But when you rise higher, when you keep building and growing, your success becomes the loudest revenge. Success forces your enemy to sit in the audience of your life, watching you shine while their efforts to drag you down fall flat. You don't have to say a word. Your accomplishments speak for you, louder than any insult or confrontation ever could. The third way is self-control. Anger is a weapon handed to your enemy. Every time you lose it, when you allow rage to dictate your actions, you are no longer in charge. They are, but when you master self-control, you hold the upper hand. Your calmness in moments of chaos is what makes you powerful. The fourth way is setting boundaries. Enemies thrive on access to your time, your thoughts, your reactions. When you cut that access off, they have nowhere to go. Boundaries mean you don't entertain gossip. You don't engage in unnecessary arguments, and you don't let toxic people take up space in your life. Boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They are gates that remind you who is allowed in. By choosing who you give your energy to, you starve your enemies of the attention they need to survive. The sixth way is your reputation. Character is a form of silent destruction. When your reputation is strong, when people trust and respect you, the lies and rumors of your enemies fall flat. They can try to discredit you, but if your track record speaks for itself, no one will believe them. Reputation is built through consistency, how you carry yourself, how you treat people, and how you handle pressure. It is one of the strongest shields you can ever build, because once your name carries weight, no enemy can take it from you. The seventh way is indifference. Indifference is colder than anger, sharper than words, and more cutting than revenge. When you treat an enemy as though they don't exist, you destroy them by denying them significance. People crave importance, even if it comes from being your enemy. The eighth way is growth. You can't destroy an enemy if you remain the same person they once knew. Growth means evolving so quickly that your enemy cannot keep up. Every time you level up, mentally, emotionally, physically, you leave them stuck in the past. Growth makes their attacks irrelevant because they are still aiming at an older version of you that no longer exists. The faster you grow, the smaller they become in your story, until eventually they vanish altogether. The 10th and final way is legacy. Your legacy is what you leave behind, the story people tell about you when you're gone. While enemies waste time plotting, gossiping, and tearing others down, you're building something lasting. A legacy destroys enemies because it outlives them. Long after they're forgotten, your impact continues. And when your focus is on creating something bigger than yourself, enemies lose significance because they're too small to compete with a vision that large. These 10 ways are not about revenge. They're about shifting the battlefield. Fighting gives enemies power, but rising above them takes it away. Silence, success, self-control, boundaries, knowledge, reputation, indifference, growth, grace, and legacy. Each of these becomes a weapon, not in the traditional sense, but in a way that leaves you untouchable. You don't have to fight to win. You just have to outlast, outgrow, and outshine. And in doing so, you destroy your enemy without ever lifting a finger. Strength is not always found in the clash of swords or the roar of a battlefield. Sometimes, the strongest warrior is the one who never has to draw a weapon. Power is not about how many fights you win, it's about how many battles you never have to fight, because your presence, your discipline, and your mindset already command respect. A warrior without a sword is not weak. On the contrary, they are feared even more, because their dominance comes from within, not from what they carry in their hand. The truth is, most people live reactive lives. They move through the world always waiting for the next challenge, the next insult, the next person to test them. And when it comes, they explode. They argue, they fight, they throw energy into proving themselves. But a true warrior knows this is wasted effort. A warrior without a sword doesn't need to prove anything, because they already know who they are. Their confidence is internal. unshaken by the noise outside. When you operate from that place, you begin to see that life doesn't require you to fight every battle. It requires you to master yourself so deeply that you don't even see small battles as worth your time. This shift in mindset is what separates the strong from the fragile. The fragile are always defensive, always explaining, always proving. The strong don't bother. A warrior without a sword doesn't answer every provocation, doesn't justify their every move, and doesn't stoop to the level of people who try to drag them down. They understand that the greatest form of dominance is not in crushing someone physically or verbally, it's in denying them the chance to matter in your world. Think of the lion. The lion does not chase after every barking dog. It does not lower itself to fight creatures that pose no real threat. It saves its energy for what truly matters. That's the same philosophy a warrior without a sword lives by. Not everything deserves your reaction. Not every attack is worth defending. Not every enemy is worthy of acknowledgement. This kind of discipline takes maturity because the temptation to respond to prove yourself is always there. But once you've trained your mind to recognize what's beneath you, you step into an entirely new kind of power. A warrior without a sword fights battles on an entirely different field, the battlefield of the mind. When someone insults them, their battle is not with the person, it's with their own ego. Can they remain calm? Can they choose dignity over anger? Can they stay focused on their mission rather than get distracted by noise? This is the fight that matters, and when you win that fight, you win everything. Because the truth is, your greatest enemy is never out there. It is always in here, inside your own mind, and when you conquer yourself, you're unstoppable. The mindset shift is realizing that life is not about proving people wrong, it's about proving yourself right. Enemies will always exist. There will always be doubters, haters, and critics. But their voices only have as much power as you give them. A warrior without a sword doesn't give them that power. They walk into rooms with presence. They face adversity with calm, and they rise above challenges with patience. People notice this. They notice when someone is unshakable, when someone can't be baited or provoked. That kind of person becomes magnetic, respected, and often feared, not because of what they do, but because of what they refuse to do. Think about the last time someone tried to provoke you. Maybe they said something petty, maybe they tried to embarrass you, maybe they tried to make you feel small. Did you react? Did you defend yourself? Did you throw words back at them? For most people, the answer is yes. But imagine if you had said nothing. Imagine if you had smiled, stayed calm, and continued on your way as if they didn't exist. Who would have looked stronger? Who would have walked away in control? That is the essence of being a warrior. Without a sword, you never hand over control of yourself to someone else. Another important shift is understanding that restraint is not weakness. Society often glorifies aggression, as if being loud and confrontational is the same as being strong. But real strength is restraint. Real strength is the ability to stay composed in the face of chaos. Real strength is walking away when every bone in your body wants to fight because you know that lowering yourself is the true loss. When you practice this, you become dangerous in the best way. People sense it. They know you are capable, but they also know you don't waste your capability on nonsense. That balance, strength with restraint, is what makes a warrior without a sword so formidable. This way of thinking also requires patience. The warrior without a sword doesn't need immediate gratification. They don't need to win the moment. They're focused on winning the long game. Small insults, temporary setbacks, and petty rivalries don't matter because their eyes are fixed on a bigger vision. And that vision is what drives them. While others are busy throwing punches at shadows, they're building something lasting. That's why they always end up ahead, because they never lose sight of what truly matters. Finally, a warrior without a sword understands that the real victory is peace. Not peace that comes because everyone else stops attacking, but peace that comes from within. The kind of peace that cannot be disturbed by gossip, betrayal, or conflict. When you live in that state, you don't need to fight anyone because no one has the ability to touch you. That is the highest level of power. Not conquering others, but conquering yourself so completely that no one can disturb your inner world. To live like this is to live untouchable, to carry yourself with quiet authority, to remain calm when others lose control, to refuse to fight small battles because you're destined for greater wars. That is the mindset of the warrior. Without a sword, it's not about showing people how strong you are. It's about being so strong within yourself that the world can't shake you. And when you master that, you realize you don't need a sword. You are the weapon. Victory is a word people love to chase, but very few ever stop to ask themselves what it truly means. Most imagine it as a moment of triumph, standing on a stage, receiving recognition, proving others wrong, or finally silencing the critics. They see victory as the defeat of another, as if the only way to rise is by crushing someone else beneath their feet. But that definition is limited, even shallow. The ultimate victory isn't about beating others. It isn't about revenge or even recognition. The ultimate victory is mastery over yourself, and the ability to live your life so elevated that no enemy, no insult, and no circumstance can drag you down. Think about it. If victory only comes when you destroy someone else, then your sense of winning is forever tied to their existence. Should depend on their failure to validate your success. That means they still hold power over you. True victory is far more personal and far more lasting. It's when you no longer need their downfall to feel accomplished. It's when your peace of mind, your progress, and your growth become untouchable, completely independent of anyone else's opinion or interference. That's the victory that endures. The ultimate victory begins with refusing to be controlled. Every time you let someone's insult shake you, every time you allow betrayal to make you bitter, every time you give in to anger and lose control, you've handed your enemy a piece of your power. They didn't defeat you, you defeated yourself by reacting. But when you choose restraint, when you choose focus, when you choose not to let outside forces dictate your inner world, you've already won. Victory is not always about advancing forward. Sometimes it's about holding your ground so firmly that nothing can move you. Another layer of true victory is rising above the need for revenge. Revenge feels sweet in the moment. It feeds the ego. It satisfies that burning desire to make someone pay. But revenge is temporary. It ties you to the very people you want to escape. It makes you orbit around them, spending your energy and time in their shadow. The ultimate victory is walking away, moving on, and excelling so much that their existence no longer matters. The silence of your indifference will echo louder than any act of revenge ever could. When your life becomes bigger than their betrayal, you've destroyed them without ever lifting a finger. Victory is also about consistency. Anyone can win once. Anyone can have a good day, a lucky break, or a moment of triumph. But the ultimate victory is not measured in moments. It's measured in longevity. It's about creating a life where you keep winning day after day, year after year, not because you outplayed others, but because you outlasted them. You kept growing when they stayed stagnant. You kept building when they gave up. You kept evolving while they were stuck in old battles. Over time, you don't just defeat enemies, you outlive them. You rise so far ahead that their existence becomes irrelevant. To consider the battles most people fight. They fight for attention, for validation, for the last word in an argument. They fight to prove they are right, to show they are stronger, smarter, or more capable. And yet, even when they win, they lose because they wasted energy on things that do not matter in the long run. The ultimate victory is choosing not to fight those small battles. It's realizing that the loudest person in the room is rarely the most powerful, and that true dominance comes from silence, composure, and focus on what really matters. To experience the ultimate victory, you must understand that the enemy is not always outside. The real enemy is inside. Fear, doubt, anger, insecurity, pride, laziness, or the inability to let go. If you conquer those, no outside force can touch you. If you do not, then even the smallest provocation will defeat you. Winning over others may give you applause, but winning over yourself gives you freedom. And freedom is the purest form of victory. Think about the greatest people in history. Their legacies were not built on how many opponents they crushed, but on how many times they rose above pettiness, how many times they chose discipline over chaos, how many times they walked away from distractions to stay committed to their vision. They understood that victory isn't about the noise, it's about the work, the consistency, and the inner strength no one can see. The ultimate victory also carries peace. Not the kind of peace that comes when the world finally leaves you alone, but the kind of peace that comes from within, when nothing outside of you has the power to disturb you anymore. That peace is unshakable. It allows you to navigate life without wasting energy on grudges, without being weighed down by bitterness, without constantly looking back. It allows you to focus forward, always building, always evolving. That is what makes you untouchable. And here lies the greatest paradox. The ultimate victory often doesn't look like victory at all. It doesn't always come with applause, trophies, or headlines. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's you walking away from a fight and choosing dignity. Sometimes it's you forgiving someone who doesn't deserve it because you refuse to carry their poison inside you. Sometimes it's you smiling in the face of provocation because you know you've already won by refusing to engage. These victories may not be loud, but they are the victories that build an unbreakable life. In the end, the ultimate victory is not about conquering others, it's about conquering yourself and creating a life so powerful that enemies dissolve on their own. It's about becoming untouchable, not because no one ever comes against you, but because nothing that comes against you ever succeeds. It's about rising so high that you no longer see enemies at all. Just distractions that aren't worth your time. That is the victory that lasts. That is the victory that defines greatness. And when you live by that truth, you'll find that the wars you used to fight no longer exist, because in mastering yourself, you've already won them all. At the end of it all, victory is not about proving anyone wrong. It's about proving yourself right. It's not about silencing enemies. It's about becoming so powerful, so disciplined, and so focused that their voices fade into nothingness. The strongest person in the room is not the one who shouts the loudest or fights the hardest. It is the one who cannot be shaken, the one who refuses to be pulled into battles that don't matter. Your ultimate weapon is not revenge, not anger, not force. It is self-mastery. When you choose silence over chaos, growth over grudges, and focus over distractions, you win without ever lifting a finger. And that is the kind of victory no one can take away from you. So remember this, your enemies are not obstacles. They are opportunities. Opportunities to rise higher, to sharpen your character, and to prove that nothing outside of you can control what lives inside of you. The greatest destruction you can bring upon an enemy is to show them they never had power over you in the first place. That is the ultimate victory, walking through life untouchable, unbothered, and unstoppable.